What's up, y'all? I'm Allyn Hane, the Lawn Care Nut, and this is episode 3, mid-February, of Lawns Across America. So welcome back, everyone. This is podcast episode 3 of Lawns Across America. My name is Allyn Hane. I'm the Lawn Care Nut, and I don't just teach lawn care, I preach it, at least on this podcast. I want to thank all of you for all the feedback that you gave me after last week's podcast. I am trying to implement some of those tips that you've given to me, and I hope that I will continue to improve this content for you, especially for those of you that prefer to get your content, via this podcast and via listening. And again, many of you prefer to watch it on YouTube as well, which is why you'll notice I've adjusted the camera angle. So if you do prefer to get this on YouTube, it is there. Just Google search Lawns Across America or YouTube search Lawns Across America. Or of course, we're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, all those other things. So again, thank you all for joining me. I'm going to get right into the tips really quick here today because I've got quite a few on board, and it's fun to see as the country's starting to wake up. I'm getting the tips in I'm getting questions in from different parts of America, as well as some of you up north are starting to wake up. Welcome back. I know a lot of you have been gone for the winter. You don't really watch the lawn care stuff in the wintertime, but now you're starting to flow back into the community. I'm seeing some familiar names and faces come back. So welcome back to all of you guys up north that are starting to consider what your strategy might be this year. I hope that these tips in this video and in this podcast today will be helpful. So with the first thing, we're going to go right out today to Southern California. And this is a question that came in on YouTube. That's a great place to leave your questions, is in YouTube comments. Ryan Longnecker, he says, "Hey, Allyn, I just moved into a new home here in Southern California, my first home that I bought." Great job, Ryan. Seriously, home ownership, freaking awesome, dude. Love it. He says, "I've invited out a few landscapers who haven't told me much, but from what I can tell, I have a weed-covered St. Augustine lawn with some significant dead patches throughout." Okay? I've watched a lot of videos on St. Augustine, and here's his questions. He says, "Number one, what is the best way to identify the types and if there are multiple types of grass in my lawn?" So Ryan is asking, hey, I'm pretty sure I got mostly St. Augustine here, but I probably have some other grass types. What should I do about that? Well, here's the deal with that, Ryan. It doesn't necessarily matter what the other grass types are, because if you have St. Augustine grass, that's what you need to go with. It doesn't play nice with other grasses. It doesn't really blend well, maybe with centipede, but that's not going to be something that you're going to find, I don't think, in Southern California. So don't worry about what other types of grasses are there. They're all going to be considered a weed because you're going to choose St. Augustine grass as your primary crop or as your primary grass type. Does that make sense? So all the others are weeds. Now the next thing is, he says, I've got some dead areas, significant dead areas. So here's the thing with St. Augustine grass. You can feed it hard with nitrogen and keep it watered and it will grow. It grows with stolons, and I call them Sylvester Stolons. I took that from another viewer, so I didn't make that term up, but it's a fun one because they're fat and they grow across and they spread. The stolons push out. Every couple inches there's a node. That node pushes down roots, pushes up new grass blades, keeps going. It just marches across the land. So St. Augustine grass will fill in quickly if you push it hard with nitrogen, again, as long as temps are warm and you're irrigating. And again, the more you mow, the healthier it will grow. If you mow that St. Augustine grass every 3 to 5 days in the growing season while you're pushing it hard with nitrogen and keeping it irrigated, it's going to push out more stolon growth and it's going to grow wide to take over. So that's the first thing to realize. Secondly, if you do want to go faster, if you want to get a quicker thickening up, then you can get plugs. Plugs are really what we would consider grass seed for these warm season type grasses. And we're going to talk about seeding today, warm season grass seeding today for the rest of you guys. So kind of a nice dovetail topic here. But for St. Augustine grass, there is no seed. It's a sterile. If you see your St. Augustine grass going to seed, that is not viable. So you can't buy seed for St. Augustine grass. Plugs are our seed. So that's one way to speed things up. And then, of course, if you want, you can just drop pieces of sod in too. Now, as far as what variety of St. Augustine grass to get, I would just go to a local garden center and ask them, what do most people around here get? Because I'm not sure in Southern California. I know here it's Floritam you mostly see, as well as quite a bit of palmetto, maybe a little bit of Seville, some bitter blue for sure around here. But you'll need to ask what the primary best St. Augustine adapted to Southern California is, and I would go to a local garden center for that, and maybe you can even get some plugs from them. So that's kind of how I would start with that. The other thing he asks is, should I start with Scott's Bonus S? So out in Southern California, I'm assuming you can get Scott's Bonus S like we can here. We also have Sunnyland, which is a local Florida fertilizer blender who I like to support because I like to support local business that way. They also have a product that's similar, but what it basically is it is a weed and feed, the Bonus S or these type products, but for St. Augustine grass, it's a little different. I make an exception for it, and I did a video about this a couple years ago. But Atrazine is the weed control in that, which is a good lower temperature weed control for St. Augustine grass. You definitely don't want to apply it over 85-degree temperatures. But when we are like we are now, where our temperatures here are going up into the high 70s, low 80s, atrazine works very well. But it's a pre-emergent as well as a post-emergent. Now, it's not the best pre-emergent, but it does work that way fairly well early in the season here. So that's why I'm accepting it as a weed and feed, because I get pre and post-emergent action out of the atrazine. And then, of course, if you buy the Sunnyland, it's got fertilizer in it, plus it's loaded with micros. The Scott's Bonus S is also a fertilizer. So, yeah, that's a good fertilizer to start off with for your St. Augustine grass, especially if you're dealing with a ton of weeds, which it sounds like you are, because you're trying to identify different grass types, really. And like I said, we're going to consider everything a weed. So get that out there with that atrazine, see what that knocks back. Take a look, reassess, and then whatever's left over there, that's when you can start dialing your strategy in. Okay, I put the atrazine down. Hey, I cleared that spot up and that. I journaled this. I journaled that. Maybe I took some pictures with my phone. Those particular weeds are gone. But hey, now we're further into the season. Something else is showing up. Just keep going. Keep adjusting the strategy as you go while you're feeding the lawn at the same time to thicken up the turf that's there while you're knocking back the weeds. You don't have to destroy all of the weeds with one giant bomb. What you do is you knock out pieces of them while your strategy develops and as you learn your land going forward. Well, I hope that this first visit to a lawn across America has been helpful to you. I did want to point out one more thing before we go to our next question, and that is that atrazine in this Bonus S, this is a Centipede and St. Augustine grass application only. It's not for other grass types. Just wanted to point that out. If you see atrazine, that's St. Augustine grass and Centipede only. Now let's get on to the next question. Good stuff. Let's go to our next one, Houston, Texas. So we are going to stay warm season for just a bit here. And this one comes from Chris V. And Chris V says, I live in Houston. Backyard is mostly dirt, half shade, half sun. I tried seeding a contractor mix from Lowe's last year with amazing germination rate, but nothing lived long term. I was considering throwing her down with centipede seed or even Bermuda seed. I get a ton of rain in Houston, and my backyard does not have excellent drainage. If we get a really heavy rain, I can have standing water for up to 24 hours in some spots. What do you recommend? All right, Chris, let's break this down. Houston, Texas. Now, guys, this is about warm season seeding, but if you're cool season grass, you can still pick up on this. There's some similar overlap. You're going to find that throughout the strategies, and that's really the fun part here, is that we all do share in the same struggles, no matter if we're north, south, east, or west. So, Chris here, Houston. Backyard. All right, so we got half shade, half sun. I'm going to assume that means not half day, but more like half of the backyard is shaded and half of it is sunny most of the day. I guess I'm going to look at it that way, but either way. He says, I tried a contractor mix from Lowe's with amazing germination rate, but nothing lived long. Here's what I think. I think your contractor mix, my friend, was probably some sort of a rye blended mix that may have been meant for winter overseeds. A lot of people will take their Bermuda grass, cut it very, very low before the winter hits, and then they'll do a rye overseed so they keep a beautiful green carpet. There's a few guys in our Facebook group that do that. It looks great. I'm pretty sure, guessing that this is what happened, is that you bought one of those contractor mixes. I don't know what time of year, but even here, you'll find that ryegrass seed and tall fescue seed. We'll find it on the shelves here year-round, even though it's really designed for the same thing. It's designed for winter overseeds. So probably whatever that contractor mix that you got, Chris, it came up fine because it was warm whenever you put it down because you're in Houston. But as soon as it got zapped with too much heat, it just died because it's a cool season grass that's really meant to be living over the winter where you are. That's my guess. Something along those lines, okay? So that's the first thing. And so lesson learned, keep moving on. Now you're considering centipede seed or Bermuda seed. So let's talk about seeding warm season turf. Pack a lunch here. I think we're going to talk a little bit long on it, but I think it's good to think through it. And I'm going to try to slow my pace down here for you guys. Of course, I'm drinking coffee during the podcast here, which may not do much to slow me down, but we'll keep working on that. So seeding warm season turf. I want you to just think about one thing. First thing is we have a much longer growing season in the south. Secondly, that means that weeds have a much easier time getting in. In other words, because we have longer days and we have longer sun hours and we have longer seasons in general, that means the weeds that we have are adapted to growing in that particular scenario. So are our grasses. That's why our grasses like Bermuda and St. Augustine grass can take over very quickly because they're adapted also to long seasons and they're adapted to be alpha to take over. I call them that. But so are the weeds. The reason that matters, though, is because when you're growing a warm season turf from seed, you are starting at a disadvantage because growing the turf in the South is slower than the weeds. The weeds are adapted to come along very, very quickly. They sprout up and take over quickly, whereas our grass seed for these particular varieties does not take over quickly. It's got to have an established mother plant or an established root system and an established rhizome and stolon system, or both in some cases, like with Bermuda. It needs to have both of those established so it can get quicker. It's got to have a jump start, and that's why we use plugs and not necessarily seed. I hope that makes sense. What I'm basically telling you is that in the South, the jungle is always trying to retake the land, and the weed seeds are adept at growing quicker and taking over faster than the grass seeds are. That's just how it works. Now, there is one exception with Bahia. I think Bahia can probably do pretty well from seed because it's a quick grower. It's really a faster pasture type of a grass, so Bahia can do that. I don't recommend you seed Bahia. But Centipede is definitely a slow grower. It's a slow growing turf even when you sod it, even when you get it with plugs, even when you have it in your lawn, it's a slow grower. It doesn't even like a lot of nitrogen. Bermuda will do fine. It will actually grow out of all of the grass seeds in the South. I think Bermuda is probably the one that will do the best, the quickest, and I've done seed jobs, one seed job, I should say. We called that Frankenlawn in St. Pete, and I had some results, but you will see if you look at those videos, if you just go and you Google search or go onto YouTube and search my St. Pete project or Bermuda, St. Petersburg, Florida project, it'll come up. You'll see the weeds took me over quickly, and I had to do quite a bit of weed spraying to really stay on top of everything, and I had to be careful because it would knock the Bermuda back. The thing is Bermuda will take over anything, but it's got to gain energy first. It's got to mature. It needs to spend time as a young plant maturing and gaining a root system and learning to not only put up stolons and rhizomes. It's got a lot that it's got to do, right? So what you'd rather do is pre-grow it, let it kind of stay back in training, stay back and work out and train for that day when it's a plug now or sod, and then it can go in and then it can be pushed to grow. Even plugs are going to be tough. So I just want to say I do not recommend seeding with warm season turf, but if you are going to do it, you have to do it in the spring for sure. There is not a possible way, I say that, it's tough because it'll be a challenge to some of you guys, but it is not possible to really seed in the fall with that. I just want to say that with warm season turf. However, going back to our question here, Centipede's going to be too slow. Bermuda would be your best bet, but I think that you're going to get overrun with all kinds of other weeds in the process, and it's going to be really, really frustrating for you, Chris. And I would highly recommend that you reevaluate what you currently have in your lawn, what is currently there. Now, if it's a backyard and it's a small spot, maybe you just consider doing some sod. If it's a small backyard, just drop some sod in. You don't lose any points, any style points by sodding. It's just what we do down here in the South because the jungle is always trying to retake the land. It's just going to come back on you. The other thing I would consider, though, is that shade issue you mentioned. There is no warm season turf that's going to do well in shade. I recommend 4 hours of direct sunlight a day minimum for any warm season grass. And you got to realize that throughout the year, the sun position will change. So when I say that, it needs to get 4 hours of direct sun at the worst part of the year, depending on the location of the sun. But in the higher parts of the sun, in the middle of the summer, it needs to be getting 6 or 7 hours of sunlight a day. That's how warm season turf lives. It needs all that energy because it's so aggressive and because it spreads so quickly and because it's got to, keep back the weeds. So just a lot of things to consider there. The first thing I would consider is that shade back there. The second thing I would consider is dropping sod. That's just my best bet for you. If you are going to seed, then yeah, you're going to want to use Bermuda. I would not do Centipede, and I wouldn't do Zoysia either. So, boy, I hope that helped you. Oh, the drainage. You want to talk about the drainage real quick? Listen, I think 24 hours of standing water is quite a bit. I tell everybody that if you have drainage issues, you got to get the drainage out of there. So that's either French drains, surface drains. I don't know what your particular situation is. Maybe you have some downspouts you can divert away that would help. But yeah, you don't want any kind of water standing for that long, especially with the big rains that you guys get in Houston. That's not going to be good for the root system. It's not going to be good for the soil. It can kill soil organisms. So you need to get that water drained out of there. And usually the best bet with that would be French drain type installations. So something you can do yourself for sure. I watched apple drains on YouTube when I was going to do mine. I gained a lot of confidence. And mine have been successful. The two that I did a couple. I can link you to those videos as well. All right, well, I'm sure we're going to talk a whole lot more about seeding as this podcast goes on. A couple things I did want to just point out here, though, is, again, you do have a problem with frost. I don't think Houston's one of those areas, but a lot of you guys, maybe over through Georgia and even up into South Carolina, that might be considering doing warm season seeding. You need to be concerned about the threat of frost, because frost will also kill young seedlings, and we're going to mention that for a cool season lawn here coming up. But just something to think about for warm season lawns too. You can't start too early because the threat of frost could kill any new seeds you have, once again compounding the challenge. I do always recommend no seeding with warm season turf, but if you do, please send me some pictures of your success, because I know if anybody can succeed at it, it'll be you. Next, let's head out east for another question out of Maryland. Okay, Walkerstown, Maryland. So going over a little bit east over there, Adam D says, Allyn, my yard is still really thin, even though I followed your fall cool season lawn strategy last year. Uh-oh, Adam. Adam, what's going on, buddy? Nobody fails. Never. Everybody's a success. I'm just kidding. No, it's good. Let's see. I really want to overseed this spring, but I'm also interested in putting a pre-emergent down. Good job. So, Adam, your thinking is dead on, dude. You're thinking exactly right. You're like, all right, here's one option, but I also want to follow this option. You're weighing out your options. Good job. I really want to overseed this spring, but I'm also interested in putting a pre-emergent down. Would it be better for me to put down the pre-emergent early spring and then wait to overseed? Or should I overseed early spring and then wait till it's safe later on and apply the pre-emergent? This is great. So I did email with Adam just a little bit. He sent me a couple pictures of his lawn, as well as he talked about a couple dogs that run on it. So that's one challenge that he's got. But here's what I want to say, and I'm going to tell all of you guys this. I really think that the lawn will come back, even though you don't think it will. It's going to have more power to come back than you think. And the way I tell you to know that is go Google search the Lawn Care Nut Church Project. Look at our original church project that we did in Crown Point, Indiana. It's cool season grass, probably similar type of grass to what we're going to have here in this case. And that grass looked terrible. When you look at those early videos, go look. It looked like a lot of sticks and bare spots and hardly any lawn. And then if you look at it after some fert and a little bit of warm temperatures, boom, it just came back. Lawns can really look bad during winter, and then you throw on a little foot traffic there. You're looking at it all the time. You're seeing all the bad parts of it. But I tell you, you get out in the spring and you get some fert down and you let those nourishing spring rains start to hit it, and you'll be surprised at what actually does come up. Again, with you, I don't recommend spring seeding. I recommend you go after the Crabgrass Pre-Emergent. You stick with that. We do split apps, 55-degree temperatures. As you approach 55-degree temperatures in the soil, that's your first application of prodiamine. Then as your temperatures in your soil start to approach 70, which is going to be 40 to 45 days later typically, that's when you're going to apply your second application of prodiamine. We're calling that a split app. That is what you want to do, because that is going to keep the crabgrass out, because I'm going to tell you that crabgrass invading your lawn here is going to be a worse fate than whatever you might get out of that seed in the spring. That's the thing that's going to outrun you up north. Down south, we have all kinds of weeds that can outrun us in our seed. Up north, it's crabgrass that can outrun you. It outruns you in a different way. It actually hits you later. When you don't put a pre-emergent down, you won't actually see the crabgrass even start to show up till later on in the summer, months later, and that's when it hits you. So it kind of comes on a little bit later. It kind of creeps on you. So you don't want crabgrass. So I recommend you go pre-emergent, bro, and you hit it really, really hard with fert. Again, every 4 to 5 weeks, just like the book tells you, bang, bang, bang. I say really, really hard. Look, we're doing half a pound, 3/4 pound in. We're not going nuts, but consistently. And then again, the more you mow, the healthier it'll grow. So that's what I recommend for you there. I bet you it's going to get thicker quicker than what you think. Now, a lot of you guys are probably thinking, well, what if he seeds now and then he just waits 6, 8, 10 weeks, and then he puts down his pre-emergent? And for sure, you can look on the label of your pre-emergent and it will give you reseeding windows. But as you're going to see coming up here, not in the next tip, but in one a little bit later on, we're going to talk a little bit more about cool season grass seeding, and that threat of frost will come back again. But before that, let's head all the way back out west to sunny California. All right, next one, Stockton, California. So this is kind of middle of the state. It's a 209 area code. Aaron C. says, I have a Bermuda lawn and would like to get it thicker without the use of seed. Where should I start and what fertilizer should I use? Good question, Aaron. So The thing about Bermuda grass is it's the alpha grass. It is the one that's going to take over the fastest, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to warm season turf. It has rhizome and stolon growth, and it just creeps. It likes a low cut. In fact, the lower you cut it, the more it's going to spread out. The more you chop it and chop the tips of it off, it just spreads out more arms. It just keeps going. It keeps running. You can actually take runners that maybe push across your driveway. You can snip those off. You can plant those in spots. It's called sprigging. You can put those in the ground and keep those watered, and they'll take off sometimes from there. Lots of things you can do with that. So my advice to you is to mow every 2 days, every 3 days in the in season when temperatures are rising. Obviously, keep it irrigated. And then the biggest thing for you is, I don't care what fertilizer you use, man. Whatever you like, whatever is comfortable for you, get a half pound, maybe a little more than a half pound of nitrogen every 4 weeks on it during the growing season. Nice and easy, just bing, bang, boom, keep her moving. And I think you're going to get really thick really quick, and you won't need any grass seeds. So that's my recommendation for you. Of course, pre-emergence as well to keep out any type of competition. All right, next let's move over to Clarksville, Tennessee. So this is northern Tennessee on the Kentucky border. I think this is pretty close to Mr. Matt Martin. This comes from someone named Renee. And Renee says, can Crabgrass dithyopyr, which I'm finding at Lowe's, can it be put down too soon to not work? We're in Tennessee and have roller coaster ups and downs. It's already been 70 here with soil temps at 60 for a day or two. But now it's 20 with soil temps in the 40s or lower than 55. I always used to go by when the forsythia bloomed, but now have bought a soil thermometer. So when should I apply? So Renee, great question. These are great questions. So the first thing, let's talk about the soil temps, okay? And this is something we talked about in last week's video, but it's excellent to review because repetition is the key to learning. So the first thing we want to look at are the soil temps. So I have the Greencast Online soil temperature tool pulled up here as the time that I'm filming this. And what I'm getting here is right now in Clarksville, Tennessee, we have average soil temperature for the last 24 hours is 42 degrees. So 42, I would say, is low. That is a little bit soon. That's looking at the 24-hour average, though. Then let's go down and look at the 5-year average for this time of year, which again is, I'm doing this on February 13th here. So the 5-year average is 38 in Clarksville, Tennessee. So you're about 3 or 4 degrees above average right now, but you are not at what I would say is the critical go time for pre-emergent. Now, I know you mentioned that you had a day where your soil temps got up in the 60s, I think. Those are freak days. That's just what's going to happen. But we want to find out when is the average time. In a perfect year or in an average year, when would you apply your first preventative of crabgrass control, which for you, you're talking about the Crabgrass dithyopyr, which we're going to talk about, because that is something you can go right now to Lowe's and get in a lot of places. So Clarksville, Tennessee, average right now 42, average typical this time of year 38. Let's find out when the perfect window for you would be. So let's go ahead and go back and let's see when typically Clarksville, Tennessee, let's see when typically your soil temps start to near 55. I'm going to go to the end of February first and let's see what we get. Okay, so nope, end of February, still showing me a 45 there. So we'll go into March for you, Clarksville, Tennessee. And again, we're north of Nashville here if you guys are following along. So let's go to March 15th. Okay, all right, so March 15th, I am seeing the average of 50 degrees for the last 5 years is around March 15th. So, that's what I would say is approaching 55. I'll look at a couple days later, March 17th. Oh yeah, see by March 17th it jumps up. Let's go to March 20th. Yeah, it kind of hovers actually. So right there in the middle of March, it's going to hover around that 50, 52 to 53. I'm all the way up to now March 23rd, and the average is still only 50. So I'm going to tell you, Clarksville, Tennessee, based on where you're at, that your ideal typical first application window is somewhere between March 15th and March 25th. That's going to be your typical average year. So now I would look at where I'm at today, and I'm only on February 13th. That's quite a bit of ways away. I'm a month from my normal window. This is too early. A month is too early. If I was only a week or 10 days from my normal window, then I would say, we might want to go ahead and get out there. We're running warm, for example. But I'm not. I'm still a month or even better away from my normal window of when my first app would be. So no matter what you've seen recently, I would not put down any pre-emergent. Now, what if you did? Let's just talk about it because it's something that comes up. Some of you guys, you pull the trigger early. I get it. I've done the same thing. In fact, I put way too much fert down way too early on most of my lawn here. I got new sod. I couldn't wait. I had the urge to throw down. I had some good good smelling success here in the garage. And, what am I doing if I'm not pushing the lawn, So Crabgrass. Now, Crabgrass is a stay green product. I could not find a label. It's sold at Lowe's, so I'm guessing that's their brand name, Stay Green. What I'm finding is very interesting as I get more into this whole world of these products and how this stuff works is really everybody's got the same stuff. They just pay to put a different label on it. They even share some of the EPA numbers a lot of times. So I'm still learning how all that works. But basically the Lowe's Crabgrass is a 0.25% dithiopyr. Dithiopyr is the active ingredient, and it's 0.25% of that active ingredient. So either way, this is a dithiopyr, 0.25%. When I look up the EPA number, I actually find it under the brand Expert Gardener, which is one we've seen at Walmart before. So that's another one of those that somebody's blending for or making for. So on the label of any pre-emergent you get, it's going to give you windows of time based on the application rate. So I'm just going to read this one real quick, and then that's what I want you to do is read your windows of time. What happens is if you apply too early in the season, then you're going to run out too early in the early summer. And if you apply too late, then you can miss, right? That's why we talk about this window that we have. And so applying a month early is probably not the worst thing because I'm looking at this product here, but it's also not a best practice. So I recommend, no, do not apply early. This is a month early. I know you had a day that was an outlier. It's okay. It happens. It is what it is. Stay within your proper window. But on the back of the label, you are going to find something that's going to talk about the amount of product to apply. And that dithiopyr that you have, that 0.25% dithiopyr, it tells you, for example, if you're in the north, which is going to be cool season turf, that you'll get 2 to 3 months of coverage out of 1.2 pounds per 1,000 square foot app. You'll get 3 to 4 months coverage out of a 1.6 pounds per 1,000 square foot app. So it kind of gives you some numbers, and you can kind of understand how soon or how late you want to apply your applications. There's also yearly maximums that you don't want to overcome, which probably won't be a problem with this product. So long story and short is, go to the label and look at it, and it will give you different rates, and it'll tell you how long each rate will last. And then if you are going to make the decision to pull the trigger early, then you'll know, if you're in the window to do so. So there you go. I hope that gives you some good thought process to look through there in Clarksville, Tennessee. Next. Okay, this one comes from our buddy Chris over at Handy Dad TV. He's up in New Jersey. You guys will remember that Chris and I kind of did, we did a little collab last year. He went through my cool season program there and had some good results and that kind of stuff. So he's coming in this year, coming back, Handy Dad TV. You guys should check him out. He says, hey, Allyn. He goes, I have a practical question. Do you recommend 2 pre-emergent applications in all areas? I'm in central New Jersey, northern tip of the transition zone, and my soil temp reaches 55 degrees around April 20th. Good job, Chris. He's following. So he's already knowing that his soil temp is going to hit 55 degrees right around April 20th and 70 degrees around May 30th. Hey, look at that. Is that 40 days later? It is. It's interesting how that always works. Not always, but a lot of times that the 55 and the 70 are separated by 40 to 45 days no matter where you live. So my soil temp reaches 55 degrees around April 20th and 70 degrees around May 30th. The prodiamine label says you shouldn't overseed for 4 months after application. Good question, Chris. If I apply a second pre-emergent on May 30th, I wouldn't be able to seed until September 30th. I typically seed around Labor Day, so the new grass is well established before leaves start falling. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about this. This is a great question, and this goes back to, and I don't have the product that you have, Chris, but if you turn it over, you're going to have rates that are going to tell you how long it lasts, and it'll tell you at a 2 pounds per 1,000 rate, you're going to get 2 months. At a 3 pounds per 1,000 rate, you're going to get 4 months. That's what matters. Now, I know it does tell you to wait to overseed for 4 months, but you also have to look at the rate you're using. If you're using a rate that gives you 3 months, then you're going to be fine. If you seed May 30th, you have May to June to July to August, you're worn off, and boom, you can go like September 1st probably is when you want to go, because your seeding window in the fall is when your temperatures begin to hit 70 degrees coming out of summer. That's when you're going to seed your grass seed in, is right when temperatures are about to hit 70 degrees coming out of summer into fall. So I don't know what time that is for you, Chris, but that's what you're going to want to look at next, is that fall time transition, and make sure that whatever rate you choose for your second application of prodiamine doesn't stretch you that far. Now, another thing you can do is I still would recommend that you do 2 applications in the spring, just move them closer together. Here's the thing with pre-emergents. They give you a yearly maximum and they tell you can split the applications up, but you can split them up by 2 weeks. I tell you to split them up by 40 to 45 days because that does give you that maximum coverage. It gives you this kind of redundancy in the application. April 20th is when you typically hit 55, so that's when you would do your first step is leading up to that. And then you said May 30th would be 70, but if you're worried about seeding, then just move up that second app and do that one on May 5th. Do it 15 days after your first app. It's okay. You're not over exceeding anything. You're not doing anything wrong. All you're doing is you're giving yourself redundancy. You're just moving the applications closer together. So this gets a little bit advanced. So if this is confusing to you, don't worry. I have a pre-emergent guide coming out. Update on the pre-emergent. I've had to source that at another place. I had some stuff set up, but stuff just works out the way it does. So I have another place I'm sourcing that from. So I'm hoping to get it a little bit sooner, but it's still going to be a little bit of time. So if you need a pre-emergent, don't wait for me. Get it on your own. But back to you, Chris. If you're concerned about that long seeding, I would first of all check the rates on the back of the bag and just use a 3-month rate for your second application of prodiamine. If you're still concerned, then move your application up closer. And instead of waiting until May 30th, when you typically are going to hit 70, I would move it up to May 5th. You're still doing a split application. You're still giving yourself redundancy. You're not breaking anything on the label. And that way you can feel better about your fall seeding. I would also, though, check when do your fall temperatures from summer fall to 70 using the Greencast tool, and that might give you a little bit better idea on when you should seed. And probably what I should do this year is put out a seeding guide. I think I'll probably do that, so that'd probably be a good idea, kind of sticking along the lines of some of these thinking and some of these soil temperature milestones that we're following here. So Chris, I hope that was helpful to you, clear as mud. We'll get more questions about this as time goes on. Seeding is one of those things that can get, it seems like it's complicated. Everybody wants to do it. It's pretty crazy, but one other consideration here with that fall seeding and having your prodiamine from the spring run up on it is that as you reach the fall, that treatment is on its way out. It is kind of at the end of its lifespan, number one. And number two is I always recommend a mechanical aeration when you are going to do fall seeding. And the way and the nature that prodiamine exists as a vapor barrier just above the soil line, mechanical aeration is going to go ahead and destroy whatever's left there, so your seed should be just fine, especially if you follow my advice when you do mechanical aeration, and that is to poke holes, poke holes, poke holes. With that, let's get out to our last question. We're heading far back out west again to Oregon. Okay, next one, last one. This is a good one. This is from Oregon. Klamath Falls. Here's what Maria says. I'm getting pumped up for the season. I think when you say learn the land, that statement is very true. I have much to learn and I'm enjoying it. I love that. You can make it fun and you can make it exciting. Yes, you can. I have a lot of plans this season. I may have learned some hard lessons, but that's okay. I have talked myself out of a few things already, mainly overseeding, or have I, this spring, but I am going to aerate. I'm aware it might wake up the weeds even more, but that's okay. It's worth it to me. I'll spot spray. I know my soil is so compacted, I really don't want to put stuff down if I'm not going to get results. Looking forward to your updated Cool Season Lawn book. It's like Christmas all over again. Okay, so Maria, great. Thank you, Maria. And I emailed back with Maria, and I asked her a couple questions, and so she came back too, and she added a little bit more here, and she said, I'd like to elaborate on a statement I made in the last email. I was first going to overseed in the spring, and I know it can be done, but I don't think my window is long enough before the heat comes in. That's what I want to talk about with spring seeding. So the first thing is, let's talk about Maria's thinking. She said she's learned some lessons along the way. She's thinking about the strategy. I'm going to seed. No, I'm not. Then she's thinking, I want to, because I know there's an urge to seed. It's fun. She's going to aerate in the spring. We can talk about that. I don't have a problem with aerating in the spring. Yeah, I mean, it might open some things up. I get it, but I really think the process of aerating is good for you physically as a person. I think it gets you out. It lets you understand your land. You'll see things in the lawn that you don't normally see. You'll see bare spots. Aerating's good. I always say it's just good to get that hard work with an aerator out there. Sure, it's going to open things up. If you throw fert down right after, that's good. Everything's opened up. I think that's fine. I think you'll find, though, Maria, if you start using organic fertilizers, that's going to soften your soil up. Not soften it up, but that's going to help your soil naturally, getting some carbon in there, things like that. But aerating is fine in the spring. I'm not against it. But seeding in the spring is one of those things I don't necessarily recommend. And you're hitting on one of the reasons. We talked about crabgrass in that. And here's the other thing. Because of where you're at in Oregon, I'm going to assume that your season is shorter. And this is what you have to assume now when you are planning to take on a seeding with cool season grass in the spring. This is something to think about because a lot of you cool season folks are going to think about this. The first thing to understand is you cannot throw the grass seed down, or I don't recommend that you get the grass seed down at a time when there's still a threat for frost coming out of winter. because a hard frost or a freeze can kill newly germinated grass seed. I actually planted some Bermuda years ago in Florida here too early, and we got zapped with cold, not frost, but we got zapped with too cold for Bermuda, and it turned purple. So I don't know what cool season grass would do, but it will die and it will stunt. So you have to wait until you get past the chance for a frost in the spring. I remember in Northwest Indiana, that was like May 1st. People wouldn't plant annual flowers until after May 1st because they had a chance that they could get a frost or a freeze, which would kill your annuals, and that happened to me before. And the same would happen if you had new grass seed that had just germinated and hadn't had a chance to mature enough and develop enough of a root system to support itself and all of those things. So what could happen is any seed you put down in the spring can just die. So I think that's pretty much what she's getting at here. And I agree with you, Maria. That's not a chance I would take because all of that hard work, even if it did grow, would die. But you know what wouldn't die from that hard frost? Would be any crabgrass that germinated. It just wouldn't, and it would run you over in the fall. So that's the thing to consider about spring seedings in northern climates, is that chance of it getting frozen off. So I think I'm going to end it there today. I really hope that these tips have been helpful to you. Again, please give me your feedback below. I really appreciate everything that you guys tell me. We are going to add a call-in line here where you guys can call in and ask questions, and we'll put that up, as well as the more that I kind of go through this and study it, I will develop a little bit better cadence, I know, and be able to really get these questions out. So with that, if you do have questions, the best place to leave those is on either one of my YouTube channels. That's where I can get those and I can answer those. Always make sure you tell me where you live, what you've been dealing with, give us the background, that kind of stuff, and we will go from there. As well as visit my website, thelawncarenut.com, where you can sign up for my weekly newsletter that I send you out. It goes out every Tuesday, and it's all tips that complement this here and this podcast here, as well as my regular YouTube channel, which is on YouTube, and it's called The Lawn Care Nut. With that, I'm Allyn Hane, The Lawn Care Nut. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the lawn.